Hello, everyone. As we draw our course to a close this year, it's both an honor and a privilege to welcome Professor Savyasaachi for our final lecture. For years now, Professor Savyasaachi has been nothing short of a beacon of knowledge, guiding us through the complex terrains of dialogue and understanding. His insights and expertise have enriched our learning experience. Professor Savyasaachi is a distinguished former faculty of the Department of Sociology at Jamia Millia Islamia. Professor Savyasaachi comes with extensive experience in political ecology, the rights and issues of indigenous people, development, social movements, and conservation architecture. Today's session by Professor Savyasaachi promises to encapsulate the essence of our 6-month-long explanation into dialogue studies. He will be sharing his wisdom on belonging and the necessity of dialogue. As we convene one last time for this academic year, let us embrace the wisdom that he shares, carrying forward the lessons learned into our future endeavors. To all the participants, I encourage you to engage deeply with today's session, reflecting on our journey together and envisioning the paths we will forge, inspired by his teachings. Let's make this final lecture a vibrant exchange of ideas, a celebration of our shared learning, and a stepping stone towards continuing the dialogue beyond the confines of this course. Thank you, Professor Savyasaachi, for joining us today. The floor is yours, and we are eager to absorb whatever insights you have to share.
Well, thank you very much. That's a very kind and generous introduction. What I have for you is more a conversation than a lecture. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to raise some questions, and I hope that I will get a response from you which is not too contemplative. I want your off-the-cuff response to these questions so that we can continue to make a conversation on this. So the idea is that if we can make a conversation, then we know what dialogue is. But if you can't make a conversation, then there is something that is missing in understanding how what a dialogue is. So this is also an experiment and a test of whether we understand truly what a dialogue actually means. So my first question is, and this is based on some of my observations over many years of research and activity. Do conflicts really get resolved with dialogues? Why is it that we think the dialogues are important? And my understanding is the dialogues are important because of conflicts, because of difference of interest, because of wanting to resolve conflicts. Now, my experience tells me that dialogues play a very limited role in the resolution of conflicts. What does your life tell you about this? How many conflicts have you resolved through dialogue? Or how many conflicts have you seen getting resolved with dialogues? You've had 6 months of discussion now, gentlemen, ladies. You may disagree with the question.
I'm just going to jump in and say that I think not necessarily so much with dialogue, but in interpersonal conflicts, a lot of times just listening resolves the conflict up to 70-80%.
Up to 70-80%?
Yes, just listening. Not all, but like a lot of them. Sometimes people just need listening.
What about the 20%?
That requires more action than dialogue, because sometimes it's just talking about is not enough. You do need some I don't know, some action to be done. It has to be followed up with action.
Does everyone agree with that? Yes,
say something.
Maybe not. You have to say something, otherwise we cannot have a conversation.
Yes, I also agree with that. A dialogue can be, the initial stage to resolve a conflict. after the dialogue, after understanding the reasons and what can be done, we can take the actions.
Okay, anyone else? Please participate, because otherwise we don't know what a dialogue is.
Sir, I think the dialogue does help, but it also depends on what kind of a conflict we are talking about. If it is an interpersonal conflict, like ma'am pointed out, then obviously dialogue helps. But if it is a political conflict, that too at a large scale, or something that has been protracted, then I don't think so. Dialogue actually helps that much.
I'm going to take names. Tulika, Naeem, Zikra.
Yeah, I also agree with Kenna. In my view, not all major conflict, but yeah, on the ground level, or we can say it's like if we are living in a family and we have some disputes and conflict with each other, we can solve through dialogue.
Okay, so my next question is that, do conflicts arise because of absence of dialogue?
I think because of lack of communication, I think so.
For example,
Not on a major conflicts, but on a minor levels, I'm telling you, because of lack of communication, conflict arises.
can you suggest what are the conflicts that arise because of lack of communication? Give me an example.
I don't know the major conflict. I'm not talking about major conflict, but a minor conflict sometimes because of misunderstanding. We create conflicts and because of lack of communication, it goes so far that we face conflicts, and it became so major that we can't resolve through dialogue.
So can we take an example to discuss this? Can anyone suggest an example to discuss this proposition? Let's say conflict within a family. Let's take a simple conflict like, whom do you want to marry? Right? And your choice is your personal choice, and your parents' choice does not respect that. Right? And this is a conflict that we have seen for many generations now. Right? And we have seen the political fallout of this conflict is very, very deep and very, very harmful. Right? Now, how are these conflicts resolved? More often than not, somebody has to concede the point. Right? Either the girl or the boy or the parents. Somebody has to give in. Otherwise, this does not get resolved. So whenever there is a conflict like this, you come to an agreement after many years of what you think you should do is right. So the point is, any conflict either privileges the individual or the collective. Right? So in this case, if you follow your parents, then you are privileging the individual over yourself. And if you privilege yourself, then you're undermining the collective because of your pursuit of what you want to do. And this is an unending, unresolvable situation, because these conflicts I've seen in families go over generations. People don't talk to each other for decisions that you've taken regarding your marriage choices. Right? So this conflict is not resolvable through dialogue at all. Take other conflicts like you having your brother having gone to school and he beats somebody up, and the principal calls you to say your brother is very, very badly behaved. So what kind of dialogue happens there? There's no dialogue. Your brother has to apologize, and on making an apology, he can go back to class, but the issue has not ended. It's been suppressed. It's been postponed for a while. right? So I'm looking for examples where it will illustrate to me that dialogues are useful in ending conflicts.
Sir, good evening, sir. Can I say something?
Please.
Sir, I would really like to answer your first question. Does dialogue really work? So yeah, our journey of 6 months, we have learned a lot. But I personally feel, uh, I think in the beginning of the entire sessions and stuff, to me, I sounded quite radical, and I did not want to talk about few issues. I did not want to participate, basically. But I personally feel in our intrapersonal conflicts, we were talking about the conflicts, I think intrapersonal dialogue to some extent works. I think we need to learn to listen ourselves, and then we would somehow learn to listen to people. And yeah, I do agree with your point. It works either for the individual or for the collective. And
There
sir,
is
yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
Sorry,
So
sir.
sir,
Continue.
okay, so sir, you even talked about in the second thing you said conflicts arise due to absence of dialogue. Uh, I don't think I would agree to a lot of extent, and I cannot come up with an example. You yourself gave the example of family, which did make sense. Conflict cannot be in few cases, I guess, not in all cases. It cannot be resolved. Yeah.
So then why do we want to talk about that? Is there any other reason? But then why do we value dialogue so much?
So maybe because we are people, we are human beings, and we are full of hope, and we are hoping that all the conflicts would, to some extent, at least lower down. Yeah.
Yeah, that is true, but I'm trying to take your attention to somewhere else. Is there any other field where dialogue has more meaning than in resolution of conflicts? I want to take you away from the field of conflicts to explore any other field where you think dialogues might be useful or where dialogues are useful.
So can I answer?
Please.
Sir, okay, any other field? So basically, the first philosopher, Socrates, his method of communicating his message was through dialogue. So yeah, uh, it does work in few cases. That's the maximum I can think. I'm very sorry, sir.
No need to be sorry. Anyone else?
Yeah, sir, I think dialogue, if it doesn't, if we have to get away from the conflict resolution thing, then dialogue is a thing that works in psychology, especially in terms of it's not conflict resolution, but it may be a better understanding of a thing that's going on in your mind.
You mean
Psychiatrist or a psychologist.
You mean therapy?
Yeah, psychotherapies. Yeah, therapies involve dialogue as a basic ingredient to it.
Now, is the therapist doing a dialogue, or is the therapist leading you somewhere where you're not there? Therapist basically
I'm saying
you.
Therapist does not
enter into dialogue with you. Otherwise, he would not be.
You have to enter into dialogue with a therapist first. I'm not saying.
No,
it's not about therapist with dialogue. I'm saying the patient and the therapist.
Is that patient narrative? Is that part of a dialogue?
Of course, to me it would be.
How? Why do you say that?
Yeah, because not only in terms of dialogue but in its basic and definition that you need to talk about a thing. That it means you have to reach to a particular goal you are aspiring, or.
But that is not a dialogue. Dialogue is when both the parties are equal. Okay. Otherwise, it's a therapist. Otherwise, it's a patient telling his problem to a therapist, and the therapist guiding you through the problem. There is no dialogue.
In dialogue, it is necessary to be at a heart level. But I don't think at every time we find such a situation where both parties are at, as you mentioned, family, there is father and then the second generation. There is always a power dynamics in play, or the authoritative things. So power, even if dialogue by definition we say it has to be between two people or two parties at a same level, it is not the case at practical world. So
No,
psychology.
there are cases in practical world where the two parties are equal. I want you to explore that area. I want you to think of those areas. There are places in the world, there are occasions in the world, there are sites in the world where two people do engage in a dialogue, irrespective of what class, status, and power they come from. Irrespective of that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, people do take part in dialogue. Suppose we have seen philosophies overcoming or theories coming by in intellectual academic world. There is people talk about it, even if not face to face, but they write about same things. One answers and then another questions it, proposes a different theory, criticizing it. That does involve a dialogue to me as well.
Well, I want to put a little wet cloth on that as well. There is a power dynamics in the academic world also.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And all conversations that appear to be happening sitting on the same table are actually not at the same level and the same equation. So you may be talking to your professor in a conference room, but you will not be in a dialogue with the professor even if he's there. It's a workshop of questions and answers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So look at other areas of your life where you think dialogue is really, really happening, meaningful. It happens. And dialogue gets its legitimacy from those areas. Dialogue used in political context is only a diluted version of what we understand by dialogue. बताइए, important
Are we
areas.
also rejecting the psychotherapy example because I mean, on the face of it, there is no conflict.
No dialogue.
Yeah, but there is no conflict in the first place, is what I'm saying.
That's very unusual to say that, because there's always for the psychotherapist to really get to the heart of the problem, he has to overcome a lot of barriers between him and the patient. Right? Patients are normally very suspect of therapists. इसको रैपर बिल्डिंग बोलते हैं, वो आसान काम नहीं है वो. So there is one field which I want to highlight where this happens here right now. What did you say, Tulika?
So this, what we are doing right now, could be an example of meaningful dialogue.
Yes, but what are we trying to achieve?
We're trying to know
establish the meaningfulness
of dialogue.
Yeah, but true, but there has to be one other referent to give us a parameter. So I'm suggesting that let's think of belonging. Right? And let's think of belonging and its relationship to dialogue. So when we say belonging, what do we have in mind? Everybody has everybody. So if you accept to get married against your will, that's belonging.
No.
Then.
So, as in acceptance of others' people.
Example.
For example, if you want to, for example, what we can say, acceptance of other, irrespective of caste, color, and other things.
Give me an example. We have to think through examples.
Yeah. For example, if you want to conduct dialogue. We are not looking at the person we are going to conduct the dialogue is superior or inferior, as a professor or as a doctor or as a carpenter. We want to establish. So this is, I think, belonging, acceptance. I think so. I don't know.
Please,
I'm right
everybody
or not.
participate. Do you agree with this definition of belonging?
Yeah, I think what she says is a place where you feel you belong. Like if you feel that you're a really good psychologist and psychology, I mean, you really are, a scholar and a teacher of psychology. And then this is where you belong when you are talking to people, um, who also enjoy it so much and, like that. That's what you mean, Zikra, right?
Yeah.
This is where you belong.
So, again, I want you to go to a more deeper understanding of belonging, because belonging is also used to express a little level of comfort,
Yeah.
right? But that is not the same as belonging, right? You may feel comfortable in a place, but you may not belong to that place. You may not belong to that. You may not want to belong to that place, and you can't belong to a place for too long because places change. You also change. You outgrow a place. You outgrow yourself. Right? Your aspirations grow. And when your aspirations grow, your longings also grow. Right? And if everything is dynamic and evolving, then you cannot belong to something that is intransient. No?
I think in some ways you can.
How?
I am not talking about larger conflicts or major conflicts, but I just feel that I'm just thinking about my own self, and I feel that, there's just one person in my life who, whether I go to them and I say I want to be a teacher or I want to say that I want to be a psychotherapist or whatever it is, there is just some kind of acceptance. And you do feel with such people, you do feel like you belong because you feel accepted or you feel.
You feel they make a difference between being at home and belong. So when you belong to someone, what does that mean? When I say that I belong to you, what does that mean? Can anyone belong to anyone else?
No.
No, no.
It's hard to belong to your own self. How can you belong to somebody else?
Exactly. So what does it mean to belong to yourself?
Stay true to your values.
And your values keep growing and changing, right? So there is an aspiration that each one of you has. So you're not a stable, steady person now,
Yeah.
right? Your vision of your life continuously evolves, right? I mean, if you want to say that you belong to where you were born, that's not true.
Yeah.
It's not true. Actually, it's not true. You may want to hold that narrative in your head because that's what the narrative of the society is. And that's what a passport identity tells you. That you were born in such and such a place, so that's where you belong. But you may not belong to that place. Look at nomads. Where do they belong? Don't all of you want to travel a lot in the world? So are we not all nomadic? And if we are nomadic, then why are we saying that settling down is the best way of living in the world? It's a different thing that we have no money and we can't travel. That's a different point. But everybody gets bored sitting in one place for more than a week, doesn't it? You want to go. And what do you say when you want to come back? What does that mean? Just a minute, continue. When you say you want to come back home, what does it mean?
come back to familiarity or, some form of comfort that we know of.
Can we use another word for that? You want to be centered again. Right? So even if you go abroad, you travel the world, but you want to come back to your hotel room where you can center yourself. The hotel room is not where you belong. Hotel room is only a place where you find the environment to center yourself. Sometimes the hotel rooms are awful. And you come back and you don't feel centered in those rooms. So you are absolutely at a loss of what to do. So one important thing about belonging is to know where you can center yourself. Does that make sense? As you said earlier, that if I don't belong to myself, how can I belong to others? And when you say you don't belong to yourself, you really mean to say that you're not centered enough to know who you are, what you are, in all the dimensions that you are, what you are. Right? So let's say belonging is a way of finding your own center. And place is only an excuse or a possible location where you might find that center. Some places are more conducive than others. Right? Now, if we agree with this definition of belonging, that belonging is a way to discover your own center, then what of dialogue?
Then we're looking for common grounds.
Dialogue is not, I'm trying to suggest that when you look at dialogue from the standpoint of centering, dialogue is a way to discover that center. So when I'm dialoguing, I'm not necessarily finding a common ground. Dialoguing happens when I am able to express myself in the presence of someone in a way that in that presenting of myself, in the narration that I'm making of myself or my ideas and my thoughts, I'm also simultaneously discovering myself. Right? So these are dialogues which are not theme-based dialogues. The topic of discussion, whether there is sunshine today or not, let's dialogue about it. No, that's not a dialogue. These are non-thematic dialogues which are free-flowing, non-linear conversations. Does that make sense? Does this expression make sense? Non-linear conversations. Anybody not clear about it? Linear conversations are conversations that are focused on a theme, on an issue. Right? Clear? Very directed. You can't deviate from the point beyond a point. If you deviate from the point, then the chair sitting there will tell you, please come back to the point. But non-linear dialogues are conversations which flow out of a person, and the other person responds to the flow and not to all the ideas that emerge there. Have you ever experienced that? There are no ifs and buts in that conversation. It just flows. Have you ever experienced such conversations? It can happen with your mother, it can happen with your friend, it can happen with a dear one you met after 20 years, it can happen with a stranger on the street, it can happen with people who you thought were your enemies. It can happen with anyone. That's what is interesting about non-linear conversations. It can happen. It is not conditioned by the profile of the person at all. It just happens. And one topic leads to another, and yet to another, to another, to another, to another, to another, to another. And the net result is not only exchange of knowledge, but a sense of happiness, a sense of fulfillment. Where you say, wow, such a lovely time spent. That's all that you can say at the end of the day. Time was spent so nicely and so wonderfully. And when you think about what happened in the time, you remember nothing of what was said. You only have this feeling that the time was spent very well. Does that happen? Yes? Sonal? Unmute yourself, please.
Yes, of course. That kind of conversation and dialogue happens along with the friends and yes,
Anyone
family
who's not?
members.
It can happen with anyone. Age doesn't matter there. Gender doesn't matter there. Class, status, and power doesn't matter there. All these get absolutely zero in that minute of conversation. Alia, have you experienced similar things?
I don't talk much and I don't talk to too many people, but yeah, the few people I talk to, that's the only kind of conversations I'm able to have where, yeah, there is just, it's very, like you said, non-linear conversations.
बात कहाँ की निकली, कहाँ गई, कहाँ से छुप के कहाँ फिर चली गई, कोई उसका अंदाजा ही नहीं.
Totally. And then neither of us, I mean, the two people or maybe even a group that is having a conversation feels that they missed, like not going in that direction in the conversation. I don't know, somehow, yes. And it's so enjoyable too. There's no pressure to go in one direction.
Yes. Munir, have you experienced that?
Yes, sir. I think to me it happens on much a daily basis.
Wow.
Yeah, it happens.
You're an accomplished human being, bhai.
At the end of the day, it's in Jamia. At the end of the day, it says that chai was good. This person doesn't make good chai, and the contents, the hours of conversations, I'm on the contexts. Those are.
What do you do, Munir? I'm very curious to know.
Munir is a PhD scholar with Professor Ani Kunnat in the Center of Comparative Religions in Jamia Millia Islamia.
Oh.
Yeah, I think he lost the connection and now he's back. Yeah.
So, I'm suggesting that our longing for dialogue is because of our longing to belong. That is the inspiration for dialogue in all of us. Conflict resolution is only one small element of a dialogical imagination. Does that make sense to you? Sayeda?
But what about dialogues that we have that has nothing to do with our belonging or the sense of us belonging somewhere?
I'm suggesting that we use the word dialogue carefully in other fields because it's not really a dialogue. And the reason is that we have to call it a dialogue because it involves a procedure of listening to everyone. That is true. right? So in that minimal sense, it's opening the possibilities of dialogue. But in the true meaning of the word dialogue, it is not a dialogue because it is focused. You see, it is actually, we always misunderstand dialogue to be negotiations or negotiations to be dialogues. Right? When there is a conflict, I am negotiating. I am not dialoguing. Okay? And in education also, dialogues rarely happen because of whatever hierarchies there are in the education system. And the next important discussion is, what is it that takes you to this longing for belonging? What aspect of yourself takes you to this sense of belonging? I'll explain the question a bit. You see, animals also want to go home and be at home. Right? Animals also have a home, they have a niche, and they have to go back. But that going back is not a way of centering themselves. They like a niche, right? And that niche has so many more features than what we humans will call centering. Okay? There is a territoriality to animals also. There is an exchange of emotions amongst animals also. Right? And we have all of that. And we have something more than that also. Now, that more than that is what is important for us to understand. The correct meaning of dialogue. And why I'm saying that the correct meaning is very important in today's time, because whatever is happening in the world today is giving us definitions which are taking us away from what the definition should be. Right? It's like saying that a student once asked me, hey, why do you want to teach me about truth? Because if I speak truth, I'm going to get beaten in the world. Nobody is going to respect me. Everybody is going to tell me I'm a fool. And rightly so. We can't speak the truth all the time, can we? So then why do we want to discuss the truth? Then why do we want a discussion on truth? Because it's not available anywhere. Right? So why do we want a discussion on truth? Any ideas? Somebody will say you're talking of an ideal situation where people are truthful. So I don't want the discussion because that ideal situation will never happen in my life, anybody else's life. I don't like the way the word ideal is used. So what is the significance of a discussion on truth in realistic terms? Not in idealistic terms, but in realistic terms. Any idea? Any thoughts?
You want somebody to validate it?
Well, then validation means that somebody's truth, idea of truth is what you're accepting as your idea of truth.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not truth.
Yeah.
Truth is
But
something that needs no validation.
But you need that truth nonetheless. You don't need to go and tell somebody that you feel this is the truth. It is for your own self also. A lot of times it's for your own self.
But how do you know what is true? That is a discussion.
Yeah, it's
You
like,
can,
in that sense, it's like history. You need to decide which facts are important for you to focus on.
again, fact is not the same as truth. I can disprove one fact with another set of facts. You see, the whole paradox is that if you produce 20 facts, then I can produce the 21st fact.
Yeah, but no, I am just saying this in the sense of whatever facts there are, everybody does not need to have the same truth, is what I feel. A lot of times you have to be.
I agree, Alia, but what is the truth that everybody has in mind to be different? कुछ तो idea होगा ना कि when I say your truth is different from mine, accept it. But what is the notion of truth that you and I are abiding by? And that is, I'll tell you why I'm asking this question.
Because sorry.
What I'm trying to say is that you can bring him on the screen, it's okay.
She'd love to say hi to all of you, but
Please bring her on the screen.
Appa, तुम्हें hello कहना? He has, yeah. See, let's talk about truths and ideas. It's a she, by the way, but
Hello.
her set of reality and truth and all of that is so different. She's just interested in playing with her toys and making sure all her small toys have batteries installed. So I just feel that, all of us have different values, and because of which we choose to, accept different facts. There can be 20 facts.
No, there is no difference on that, but we need a benchmark to differentiate between some things, right? And that discussion has nothing to do with practical things.
Truth is something which you can feel very strongly.
True. But
you can feel, yeah.
I agree with that. You can feel very strongly, but sometimes it can be deceptive also. That is why the definition of truth is eternally wanting. You can never have a fixed definition of truth. You have to be alert to falses in order to know what is true, right? Now, the reason this discussion is happening is that when we want to talk about dialogue, especially in today's world, we need to clear our head of all that is being passed off as dialogue when it is not dialogue. There is a very important thing that we have to learn to do is to, because we need to know the adulteration from the authentic, right? At least food is very important in this matter. I can't have adulterated food and feel good about it, right? Similarly, in the world of ideas, there is a need for a discussion on what is a benchmark for which is something which is not adulterated, which is not something harmful. Right? Now that discussion can only happen through dialogue. And the important part of the discussion is your sense of belonging. The only way to ascertain truth is not through facts alone, but as Sonal said, feeling. Now that feeling is a feeling about what is that feeling that tells you the truth? It's a feeling of belonging to the truth, right? So what I'm trying to say in this short conversation is that when you talk of dialogue, we have to know that dialogues actually are all different forms of negotiations we call dialogue, right? And each negotiation has its own setups and setbacks. And that we should not therefore fix our definitions of dialogue and confuse it with negotiation all the time. They are two very different things. Right? When dialogue occurs between two equals, then there is no negotiation that is happening there. And to become equals, you don't have to be of the same age, or of the same experience, or of the same sex, or of the same class. All these things are neutralized when you enter into a dialogue. And why is that so? Is there any reason for this to happen?
Because these things are actually immaterial to the
Why
dialogue.
are they immaterial?
Do you mean to say because it's not a source of conflict for the people who are having the...
There is a fundamental philosophical principle involved in knowing why these things are immaterial. It's a philosophical truth. Not an ideal truth, but a philosophical truth.
That we are all going to die and go back to the same place.
वो तो होना ही है. But that is not the philosophical truth at all. वो है, एक truth है वो भी. देखिए, का truth ये है कि you all thinking beings. That is the first philosophical truth. When you all thinking beings means what? That your experience and my experience are of equal value. More and less is not determining equal value. That I have taught for 40 years and you are only a student for 10 years does not mean that your experience is less important than mine. It does not follow from this. It only means that my experience may give you more insights on how to understand it, and sometimes your lack of experience may also produce more insights than I may have. Because experience can as much be a burden as much as a relief. Your innocence and your lack of being overloaded with experience can give me more answers than my being overloaded with experience and going around the bush all the time. So this is the first philosophical principle, that we are all thinking beings. And because we're thinking beings, the way we have experienced the world is equally important, irrespective of sex, gender, class, status, and power. The second principle is that only if we can exchange our experiences, I mean reciprocity. I don't mean exchange money for value. Only if we can exchange can we come together as social beings. And the third important principle is that what makes us human is the capacity for self-correction. Even animals do that, right? वो भी अपने आप को सुधार लेते हैं अगर मालूम पड़े कि कुछ चीज उनको सीख नहीं हो रही है, right? So to enrich our capacity for self-correction, it is important that we consider each one of us to be equally valuable. Now, when these things are in place, and these things can't be put in place by a policy, these things happen through our attitudes, through our dispositions, through our worldviews, through our interactions. Right? And when these things happen, then we understand the relationship between dialogue and belonging. Imagine a situation where all conflicts are resolved. No conflict is happening. Everything is first class. Would you still want a dialogue? Can you stay without conversation? Then what will you talk about? कुछ कहने को ही नहीं है, सनसनीखेज कुछ है ही नहीं कहने के लिए. मेरे को उसने ऐसा कहा, मैंने उसको वो कर दिया, ये गॉसिप नहीं मेरे पास, वो कोई गॉसिप नहीं मेरे पास, मेरे पास कोई सनसनीखेज नहीं, कोई हरकत नहीं, तो मैं क्या बात करूंगा तुमसे? बताओ क्या बात करेंगे भाई? What will be a topic for conversation when there is no conflict that has to be discussed, no gossip that has to be made, no bitching about that has to be done? Because there is no conflict at all. सब कुछ ठीक
Can I
ठाक है.
answer?
हाँ, please.
So I think then we would talk about truth. I mean, knowing what the objective truth is, since all the conflicts would be solved, we would not want to know what truth is, because obviously we are social beings. So I don't think we could survive without having conversations.
Then you talk about what life is.
Yeah, right. Like, what is the meaning of life?
मैंने ऐसा किया, वहाँ
Then
मैंने
we
ऐसा
tend,
देखा,
जी,
वहाँ मैंने ऐसा देखा, वहाँ बड़ा मजा आया मेरे को, वो मैंने चाट पकौड़ी खाई तो बड़ा अच्छा लगा मुझको. Right? Then you will talk about things that you have enjoyed. कि वहाँ ऐसा हुआ. You talk about learnings of life. You talk about interesting things that happened to you. Right? Then you will see the relationship between dialogue and belonging. And everybody aspires to that. So with that little distinction, that don't confuse dialogue and negotiation, and that belonging is what makes us dialogue.
So, can we then talk about upliftment, growth, development, if the conflicts are not there?
हाँ बताओ. Don't ask, say.
Yeah, we can talk about that, I guess. I feel.
Let's talk about it. What about it?
Well, I mean, from the earlier question you asked, कि जब सब हो जाएगा, conflicts मिट जाएंगे, what else we have to talk? Then Tulika said we have truth to talk about. You said we talk about life, what we have experienced, the good things and all. So even after that, can we talk about the upliftment, the growth, development of
So we
each
can.
other?
So we can. So let's talk about it.
Right.
Let's do it.
All right.
Let's get into a non-linear conversation.
Okay.
Like you said, so when we are able to have a conversation, like I said, that, you know, the age or whatever is immaterial. And also because you said that everybody's opinion is of equal importance. So because of that, we are able to have a conversation. And about your latest question that you asked, I was just thinking of a poet who said that, a Palestinian poet who said that I can write about the trees and the rivers when I'm no longer seeing, you know, the ongoing conflict or war. So when there is no conflict, we can talk about nature and how beautiful it is.
You know, I'm just making a conversation now, right? I'm not giving a lecture.
Yeah.
Right? So I have been very curious about how do people survive extreme conflicts? Right? What do you do? Because our times are full of conflict and we're always at a loss to decide what to do. I mean, we feel strongly about so many things, but we don't know what to do about them. And also we know that keeping quiet is sometimes giving consent to things that are happening in the world. And we also know that talking too much is also abetting all those things, right? So I continue to read about what happened between the First World War and the Second World War. And I find that most important intellectual works that we're reading today were written in that period. Right, under Hitler's regime, under Mussolini's regime, in prisons, in cloisters, in the church. Right? How do you explain that?
I would like to say
the best works that you read today, the philosophers that you read today, Husserl, Heidegger, Lacan, Foucault, Zizek, all the postmodernists you read, they were all basically people who wrote at a time of great political stress. How did they do it? Yes. Yes, Tulika.
Sir, I believe when we are in the middle of chaos or maybe the conflict.
Mm-hmm.
So I read this, the most safe place to be when you are in a chaotic situation is the center, right? So I think their brains and their intellect used to work full-fledged manner when they were right in the middle of the conflict. So this is why they came up with such good philosophies, and all the philosophers that you mentioned does make sense. I think this is personal. When I'm under pressure, when I am going through something good comes out of it. So I never find any of the chaotic or maybe situations to be. It feels like a blessing. Yeah. So plus, I have a lot of questions about everything that you talked like in the past hour.
Please ask.
Okay, sir. So I would like to, this would take a while. Okay.
Please.
Sir, let's say so you started with the topic of the session is belonging. So what I could interpret is to know where to center yourself is to know how to belong, where to belong.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So initially you said that everything is dynamic, which is pretty evident. Like everything is people, things, places, everything is dynamic. So how are we supposed to center ourselves maybe around people or with them to to reach that? Because just there was this another phrase which you used, or then adulteration from the authentic. So these days most of the people who we find, when we even like want to have a conversation or maybe a dialogue, everybody seems to be very far from their most authentic self. These things seem to be a lot adulterated. So I believe, sir, I'm still confused about this idea of belonging. And then, sir, but then when you told about having dialogue and having negotiations, that differentiation was very well put, because that did make sense. Because most of the things that we do right now is more or less negotiations. We're not having any dialogue, right? Plus, to me, belonging is something that is with your own self. If you totally belong to yourself, then only then you would. Because since you mentioned Nomad, so there was this fine movie that I watched, Nomad Land, and that was it won like many Oscar, like an Oscar and many awards too. And there was a dialogue in it. Home, is it just a word, or is it something that you carry within you? So there's this entire idea of belonging and home and authentic self, and I'm a lot confused, sir. I don't know if being like, or maybe talking to people would help us find any of the truth, be it subjective or objective. Yeah.
Anyone wants to respond to that?
I very seriously feel, I mean, right now in my life, I just feel that, belongingness and a physical home are really distant for me. Like a lot of people, like Sir mentioned in the beginnings, people feel that they belong in a place and they want to go back to it. Maybe it's not even a recentering. To me, it started to feel like nostalgia. Like the place that I'm originally from, where my parents are from. I keep saying that, I like that place so much and all of that. But the truth is, I visit that place only for, 2-3 days, once in 5 years. So that belonging is just nostalgia, and whatever belonging I experience abstractly is what is really is me, because whatever I am, whatever my ideas are, whatever my choices are, whatever my social values, or whatever the sum of social being that I am, has nothing to do with the place that I come from. And if I start going and telling people what I really believe and what I really feel, that place is very quickly not going to feel like home anymore. So I just feel home is something that you need to carry within you, because you're a sum of your experiences, 365 days, 35 years of your experience. And no place can do justice to what the essence of you is.
Thank you. Who wants to go next? I'm going to speak last.
I'll speak with somebody who has traveled a lot, and I consider myself like a world citizen. And of course, I even with work, I keep traveling a lot, and I think for large number of months, sometimes I don't have a home. That also happens. So I'll just say something that I do to center myself. I carry one piece or one or two small pieces of things that I take with me wherever I go. And it just maybe just a bed sheet, maybe, just one thing, it's nothing. And then it just suddenly, the colors or just the item, once I have it wherever I am, it starts feeling familiar. And I'll also talk about another sense that uh, and again it's depends on person to person, but too much centering also unnerves me. I don't like being rooted, so sometimes you just want to shake yourself up so you can grow, because you need to, I mean, change is something you is something I've not fought. I've had a lot. Again, this is a matter of dialogue. I've had a lot of difficulty for many years understanding people who want to remain rooted, because I have never wanted that. Um, I've wanted to always go with the flow. So I've never sort of like understood that part. So again, that has been a dialogue. But now I think I sort of understand where they come from. I think that's all. I don't identify with it, but I still, I can understand what is their need to remain in that part. So that's just something that I will share about, centering about from my life.
Okay, who wants to go next?
I don't have much to speak on the thing of this home and belonging and centeredness.
Whatever you want to speak on.
But yeah, I have two things. First of all, on this, on a lighter comment, I would say that no doubt home has got, many definitions, and people try to describe it in many ways, like home is where love is, home is where mother is. So despite those things, home can be, if those are the things that define home, I have had a tricky relationship then with home. So do other people. I can be sure of certain here. So because suppose I am from Kashmir, so whenever I go outside of Kashmir and be in Delhi or any other city for a long time, it happens that I miss the home, and I am not sure exactly what is it in home that I miss. Is it the Kashmir thing that I am missing? Is it the mother? It is my parents, my siblings, what it is. And then comes the career thing, then comes your own aspirations and dreams that you want to pursue and in your life. And that comes at a cost of leaving this home and not being centered at that place. So with home, I do not, that is a kind of more of a relative thing, and it is very flexible. On belonging thing, sir, having this thing, what you said about belonging is that I have my PhD on the concept of othering, basically. And there is one famous scholar, professor of law, John A. Powell, who has actually founded an institute in USA. It's called the Othering and Belonging Institute. So he actually identifies the problem of 21st century as the problem of othering, and a kind of antidote to that to him is belonging. I try to incorporate that in my thesis also, and I what I try to do is that instead of making inclusion and universalism as a viable option to ameliorate the conflicts and all, it is better to go for a belonging thing. To belong means to have an equal say. To belong means to have differences but an equal place to live. Many things which he says, and he has been researching on it, particularly through a black race lens, because he's a professor who has PhD in law and race. So I think what you said today in terms of belonging and dialogue, I had missed that part in my studies. I hadn't explored it so much as what is the correct relationship between belonging and dialogue. So today it is a little, I would say, much clearer, and I think I can go ahead with certain things that will make my understanding deeper in this thing. So thank you so much for that, sir. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts. Who's next?
Sir, I would like to go next. Like sir, like Munir pointed out how the concept of home can be relatively different to everybody, and how I think so. Once you move out of a place you've lived for a considerable period of time, and then you live somewhere else, and there are times when you just want a sense of familiarity, and that is when you go back home, and that is what is the feeling of missing home, is the sense of familiarity. But the concept of belonging, I think so. Like sir, you explained how non-linear dialogue is, or non-linear conversations that we have with people. I think so. I have had that kind of a dialogue with a lot of my friends. So that is what I would like to say.
Thank you. Okay, before we move to the next three, let me respond to what each one of you have said so far. The concept of center is very complex, very difficult. And the reason is that the flow of life happens because of centers. If there was no center, there would be no flow of life. Does that make sense? It appears that something that is moving is centerless. But if you just observe carefully, because there is centering, therefore there is movement. Now, this kind of centering is not the same as fixed to a point. Let me see how I can explain this. You see, the entire philosophical predicament is that if things are moving all the time, and things are changing all the time, then how do you know what to relate with? It's like saying that Alia is changing every day. Today she's wearing one kind of clothing, tomorrow she's wearing something else, and today she's something different. And every day I find a different Alia. So how can I relate to Alia if she's changing every day? So how do you resolve that problem? And we have to change. A lot of people today are surprised and say, "Arey, tum bahut badal gaye ho, bhai." And it's not a compliment. It's a criticism. People expect you to be where you are, where they left you. And it's very disconcerting and very destabilizing for them to see that people are changing so fast. अरे हम तो आपके साथ बात ही नहीं कर सकते. Right? Now, this is something that we have to not buy into. In sociology, we call this doxa, which is very, very elusive and very, very disorienting. But the truth is, because you're centered so much, therefore you can move and change. I can give you an example of that. Have you seen an eagle fly? How can she get such a steady, straightforward flight? Is it because she is looking for a center, or is she because she is centered? When she goes on a tree, are we going to say that, no, now the eagle has found its center? No. Eagle is moving with a center within herself all the time. Right? And we find evidence of this in psychiatry also. When people lose the center, then what happens to them? बताओ क्या होता है? Alia?
They're doing things that they don't really identify with, or they're on
autopilot. They're going all over the place. They lose a sense of routine. They don't know where to go. They don't know where to sit. They don't know what to talk. Right? And what will be the opposite case?
But he's really rigid, and maybe, maybe they have also lost their center.
Exactly. Those who don't change have lost their center totally. So the madman and the orthodox man are two sides of the same coin. उनको मालूम ही नहीं उनका सेंटर क्या है. So if I was to extrapolate this onto the present political dispensations all over the world, these people have lost their center. Right? And what is the proof of that? Saida. Saida has a naughty smile on her face. She's quite amused by the comment. Huh? What is the proof that they have lost the center?
Their rigidness to stick to the status quo.
Because they keep beating people all the time. They can't find any. They can only be centered when they have beaten someone. If you ask them to be on their own, they will perish. Yeah. In other words, lack of confidence in yourself is one manifestation of loss of center. And lack of confidence in yourself expresses itself in getting confidence not from yourself, but by putting other people down all the time. And such people are dangerous. Because they will do anything. Because they don't have any center. वो ना एक इस तरह की कार है जिसका ब्रेक फेल हो गया. ना गियर काम करते ना ब्रेक काम करता है, सिर्फ एक्सीलेटर दबा हुआ है उसका बस. और स्टीयरिंग भी काम नहीं कर रहा है. पता नहीं कहाँ जाएगी कार का. क्या होगा उस कार को. So that's my response. Sorry, हाँ.
No, sorry.
बोलो प्रज्ञा.
This reminds me of this story that there was in one kingdom there was 2 different wells, one for the king and queen, and the rest rest for the remaining people. And then somebody kind of mixed something in the well which was for the citizens, and slowly that the thing ensured that people started turning mad. So and the more people started that, I mean, the water in their homes would get over, somebody new would just get converted into being mad. So so after some time, and they, because they started seeing so many of themselves around, similar people around themselves, that they started thinking that anybody who is not like them is mad. So they started considering the king and the queen mad, because they were the ones. In the end, everybody had drunk water from that well. So then the king calls his queen and says that, what should we do? We still need to rule these people, and they don't consider us good enough. So what do we do? So the queen says, let's just go in the night, drink water from the same well, and then so they go and they drink water from the same well. They're also mad, but now the population considers them worthy women of these leaders. So
Wow.
so what you just said is somewhere like, it just, I don't know, it reminded me of that story that the madman and the orthodox person is like, same coin. So it just reminded me of the story.
Please send me the story.
Okay.
Very nice story. So does that sort of satisfactorily say something to you, Tulika?
Said the story.
And what I said, both.
So I honestly can't stop thinking about the eagle, because I always loved eagle, and now I was thinking about it that those birds are the only ones whose wings are like straight when they fly, and all the other birds go like this. What is the point? I mean, this is how it works, right? Because they are like too centered. This is why they are so stable. I cannot stop thinking about the eagle.
Totally centered.
So that is what I am saying. The eagle is centered. This is why the flight is so phenomenal. Sir and ma'am, about the story, I think the king and queen shouldn't have drunk the water from the other well. Just let people say that they are crazy or whatever. And what would be the difference between the madman and the orthodox person and the king and the queen?
They have to look like each other at some point in time.
So even we'll have to act like fools at some point of time just to fit in.
No, that is your choice.
I will. I won't.
Okay.
But so yeah, I got most of the answers. Yeah.
So one of the participants is, sorry, yes, Pragya, go ahead.
Sorry. No.
Naeem is in the chat box, and he's saying we should ask the professor how much does he believe in dialogue as a means to, resolving conflicts.
Totally. I resort to dialogue in order not to get into a conflict. Because ultimately, I think, let me put it this way, there are contradictions in life. There's no denying that. But it depends on you how you want to use those contradictions to generate good energy or bad energy. So this is what I was taught by my Adivasi friends and by my professors, that certain contradictions are good to live with. You shouldn't fight them. Because they're a source of knowledge, they're a source of energy, they're a source of contemplation, they're a source of introspection. And they are instances of limiting yourself in terms of what you can do and what you can't do. In other words, self-correction happens only when you when you appreciate the value of contradiction in your life. If you want to resolve contradictions, right, then you are in a mess. Because they will never go. They will never go. It's like saying that I don't want to grow old, right? So this is a contradiction between my body and my mind. My mind wants to travel the world and my body says, I can't grow old. I have to grow old. How do I resolve this contradiction? How would you resolve this contradiction if you want to resolve this contradiction? Munir?
Sir, the thing is, I can't believe that, or I can't understand how the international parties could be failed in Afghanistan through 20 years by even applying the best kind of dialogue in Afghanistan or different kind of usage of it, but they could be failed in Afghanistan. I can't believe, but I believe on dialogue, the power of dialogue, that it can be a power to change or stop conflicts. But I can't understand that. How could they be failed in Afghanistan? At the end of this 6 months of the dialogue sessions that we had, but today is the last session. I couldn't receive this point that why, what was the reason, or what's the big picture that we couldn't see that, or what's the reality?
Naeem, that's a difficult question, and I'll try and think loud about it. I don't promise an answer, but I want to think loud about this. Can you hear me? Naeem, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. You have to understand one very important truth about modern economy, which is that it needs more areas for investment all the time. The capital of modern economy, the capitalist modern economy, needs new avenues for investment all the time. Capital cannot stay in one box. It cannot. Right? Now, conflicts will be resolved only to the extent that capital allows them to be resolved. International courts can do nothing about it. It is in the interest of capital to keep certain conflicts going. Why is that so, Naeem? Because look at it in a very different perspective. Look at the armament industry. It is the most prolific industry today in the world. Right? Why? Please research this question for yourself. Armament industry is the most, and remember, John Maynard Keynes has said that investment in armament industry is the only way to keep economies productive. So my question, I don't have an answer to your question, but I'm wondering, when armament industry is supposed to be important because it generates a sense of security, right? Which is right, which is very right. But what is the logic of this sense of security through arms? And that is the reason why conflicts continue and judiciary systems try and intervene there also. That's why I said conflicts are always about negotiation and never about dialogue. And negotiation always means who has the better negotiating power, whose interests are at stake, whose interests need to be protected. So the geopolitical position of Afghanistan is very important. Right? And the logic of Afghanistan's status is dependent on that geopolitical system in the international relations. I don't know very much about it, but this is what I've understood so far, that if you are geopolitically positioned in a strategic location, then a lot of things will happen because of your positioning in that place. And that requires negotiation. Am I able to throw some light on your question?
Yes, sir, but there are a lot of questions without answer. Anyway, the thing is, the armored industry, as you mentioned, is the biggest result. Thank you, sir.
I mean, I'm only suggesting possible lines of research that you might want to look at in order to find an answer for yourself. I'm not an expert on Afghanistan. I'm not an expert on armament industry, but my common sense says that there is some correlation between Afghanistan being positioned where it is geographically, right? And the need for the capital to keep reproducing itself and its relationship to negotiations.
Yes.
3 areas for you. Okay, so who hasn't spoken? Sonal. Sonal, then Poonam, then Zikra. And Saida has spoken, Naeem has spoken, Munir has spoken. Yes, Sonal.
So we were talking about the belongingness.
Yeah.
And the center. According to me, I mean, I have been, I'm at my home right from my childhood. I never left my home. So I really don't understand, people studying outside their home and then coming back, finding their center and all stuff. So yeah, of course I travel. So, but after coming back home, it's the comfort, which I like the most, but I don't call it as a center. For me, center is traveling, like seeing places, visiting
You're
people.
like an eagle. You're like an eagle. You're like a bird.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Connecting with them, talking to them, knowing the culture. For me, that is my center. And belongingness, I have learned in a very hard way about this concept. Being unattached, detachment, I would call it as like, I really don't know if I belong to any person because I practice detachment. Even though there is a connectedness, there is a relation, but there is a detachment, that certain detachment. Because of that, I'm able to live peacefully. And that's what matters for me. Ultimately, the peace I'm talking about, the peace of my mind, being centered there because of not, like getting affected by many things around. And I feel that practicing this makes me more independent to, focus on things, other things in life, like having a dialogue or, yeah. So that is my take.
So what do you do?
Well, to be honest, I'm an IT engineer, but I have taken a break from that because I am not fitting myself in there. And I've been associated with the social organization. I've been working in NGOs and social organizations simultaneously and working in interfaith dialogue and practices at a center called India Peace Center. I'm a core committee member there. And that's where I got to know about the interfaith activities and dialogue and practices. And that's how this interests me. And I came into this. And being associated with that social organization, I was able to connect with many people all across the globe, I would say. And yes. So looking forward to do more about it, to learn more of interfaith dialogue and working in that field.
Thank you. Very challenging field.
Absolutely, it is, but it interests me, and I think I have started to find my center in that. So yes.
Lovely. Thanks for sharing this with us. Yes, Poonam.
Hello, good evening, sir. Good evening, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Actually, I was just pondering the question you raised about home and about sense of belonging. So for me, like sense of belonging or home is like something in this moment, how I'm feeling in my being present in this moment. So for me, this is the home. Like because the other things are changing, but that feeling of yourself somewhere, like there is something constant within, so that I'm able to observe things which are changing. So that is home, from where I can observe things constantly.
Very interesting. Say more. Tell us more about observation.
Sir, like observation in the sense, like when, like for example, when I meditate, like there are lots of thoughts coming and going. So, but there is something which is able to observe that thoughts.
Mm-hmm. Very good. What is that thing? What is that thing?
I don't know. But I think that is the center, that is home. Like I have a friend who is musician. He wrote a song. There is line that journey is home. So in this moment where I am just feeling my being in holistic sense, that is home.
I want you to think more about something inside you is observing,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I want to suggest that everybody does that, right? Everybody does that. Everybody has a sense of that. Yes, no. Raise your hand if yes. No for you. Okay, now my question is, this is very well said, Poonam. Is it there that you belong? All of us. If we lose sense of that, then we lose sense of belonging. Totally. Does that make sense? So this is the one that keeps observing you, that part of you that is observing you all the time is where dialogue belongs. Dialogue does not belong to what you seem to be negotiating. Right? Dialogue belongs to that which seems to know that you're negotiating. क्योंकि देखो उसमें उसकी पॉलिटिक्स ये है कि आप अपने हाथ से झूठ बोल सकते हो ना, क्यों मुनीर? और हम काफी हद तक अपने आप से बहुत झूठ बोलते हैं और I mean we've also mastered how to narrativize that and justify it. So that's a very important point. Thank you, Poonam. We'll discuss it more as we go along. Zikra.
Hello, sir. So for me, self-centered or centered is whatever you are getting. I mean, no matter you are at home or not, you are getting in your life, you are learning something from others, you are self-centered. And the thing is, another thing is, if people are getting benefited from you, that is the means of life. So for me, self-centered is what are you doing for the society. If you're doing something for society and you're learning and your learning experience, you are self-centered, no matter you are at home or not. Thank you.
No, I have a question for you. Not thank you yet.
Okay.
The question is being self-centered important for being centered? Is being self-centered not being selfish?
No, sir. It's not selfish. If your thoughts is to getting something and giving to the society, it's not selfishness, I think.
No, that is not
because
selfish.
your intention. your intention is good as you're learning and you're thinking to give to
No,
the
that
society.
that I agree with, but you use the word self-centered.
So centeredness, longing.
Centering
I think
yourself.
she means when she said, centered in your sense of self. That's what she meant when she used the word
Yeah,
self-centered.
because okay,
Yeah.
I understand that. I just want to make you aware of the fact that self-centered is quite the opposite of being centered in yourself.
Sorry. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just a matter of expression. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So everybody's spoken, right? So where are we after that? Alia?
I think sometimes, we just mentioned about centeredness and self-centeredness, but I think it's only sometimes, it's just good to be a little self-centered because it keeps the focus on you a little bit. Because if you're just giving and giving, like I think in Turkish they say that you first need to fill your own cup to be able to give to others. So it's kind of like, yeah, putting the oxygen mask on for yourself first before you do it for others. So in some sense, I feel that if you become too selfless, then you're not able to do anything for anybody anymore. You need to do a little bit
Can I
for
convert
yourself.
this into a debating proposition?
Yeah, okay.
So the proposition is this the language of dialogue? Being self-centered, being selfish and not selfish. Is this the vocabulary of a dialogue? In other words, the suggestion is that when you want to understand dialogue and belonging, you have to do away with these concepts.
But you can't have a dialogue if you don't have a sense of self. If you're too selfish, then you are saying...
Selfishness, let me put it another way. The balance between giving and receiving, right, in a reciprocal relationship, comes about when you are free of this concern of being yourself first and then contributing to others. In other words, that when I am interacting with you, I'm giving a lecture now, right? In that conversation, I am also becoming something different, right? And this process itself has a limit beyond which it can't go at any one moment of time. And why is that so? Because what I have received from you and what you have received from me will require time to get absorbed. And such reciprocity allows for the time to happen. Selfishness or lack of self occur when, well, let's put it this way, there are two sides of madness and orthodoxy. When you are at home, when you are centered, you see the other person can't take beyond a point, na? How much can I give you that you can absorb? तुम भी कहोगी सब बंद हो गया जी, बहुत हो गया आज के लिए, अब अगली बार कल बात करेंगे, हमारा दिमाग थोड़ा ताज़ा होने दीजिए आप, बहुत ज़्यादा हो गया आज की. हजम करने की भी तो ताकत होनी चाहिए ना. ये तो नहीं है कि आप देते जाएंगे, लोग लेते जाएंगे. और लॉजिक ये देखा मैंने कि अगर आप 10 को देते हो तो 10 आपको वापस भी करते हैं. So there is a self-limiting case. So I understand what the Turkish poet is saying, that unless you are healthy, you can't contribute to other people's health. But in my becoming healthy, I can't do it all alone. there's a notice on the top or left. What does it say? Oh, okay. So does that make sense? When I am, how much I can give and how much I can receive is not a matter of volition. जो इसको डिसीजन बना देते हैं ना, उनको डिसीजन को संभालने में बड़ी दिक्कत होती है, क्योंकि then you have lost the idea of when to stop. Then it becomes madness because it's an uncentered activity. If you don't give, you feel a lack. And if you don't receive, you feel a lack. अगर आप मुझको रोज गिफ्ट नहीं देंगे, मुझे लगा कि आप नाराज हो गई हैं मेरे से, तो मैं कुछ ना कुछ ड्रामा करूंगा आपसे गिफ्ट लेने के लिए. This is one pathology. Other pathology is कि अगर मैं आपको देना बंद कर दूं तो मुझको लगेगा कि भाई आपको कुछ मिल नहीं रहा है, इसलिए I am not getting fulfilled if I don't give it to you. That is also a pathology. Am I making sense? ये होता नहीं है जिंदगी में कि आप अनंत देते जाइए और लोग अनंत लेते जाएंगे. मैंने कहीं देखा नहीं इसको कि देने वाले बहुत देते भी हैं, लेने वाले बहुत लेते भी हैं, पर उसका अपना एक सेल्फ लिमिटिंग होता है उसका. And that comes only when you are centered. And this is personal experience also. As a faculty to an international honors program, I was giving. I never said no to anything. किसी ने कुछ मांगा, मैंने ना कभी नहीं कही. तो 2 महीने के बाद स्टूडेंट आके बोलते हैं कि आप थक नहीं जाते हैं, आप ना किसी को कहते ही नहीं है. मैंने कहा आप कभी मांगना बंद नहीं करते हैं, तो मैं क्या करूं बताइए आप. तो जब उनको मैंने ये कहा तो उनको एहसास हुआ कि भाई हम तो बहुत ज्यादा हजम भी नहीं कर पाएंगे जितना हमने लिया आपसे. So there is always a point where people come to ask you, okay, what is this going on? क्योंकि देखो, to look after yourself first can become solipsistic also. It can become narcissist also. देखो कितना, how do you know how much do you need to be filled to give? कोई लिमिट है उसकी? Where will you say, okay, इतना हो गया, अब मैं देने के लिए तैयार हूं. ऐसे इसका कोई अंदाजा, इसका कोई पैमाना तो नहीं है ना. और ये अनुभव करके देखो आलिया कि जो देते हैं उनके पास होता कुछ नहीं देने के लिए. जिनके पास होता है देने के लिए वो चोनी भी नहीं देते हैं आपको. ऐसा होता है कि नहीं?
So, sir, I have an exception in mind when I think of this.
Okay.
And that exception is a vast majority of, let's say, Asian parents or mothers.
Mm-hmm.
So you can take from mothers, you can just keep taking from them.
You can't.
From their time, from their effort.
Please look carefully. They'll get sad. They'll get completely dehydrated.
They do, but they would still offer you the cup of water first.
True, but it is true. But that is the whole point about giving, na? You can't.
But I have noticed, yes, they do. But you know what happens when this continues? The mothers, I don't have anything against the fathers, but mostly the fathers are able to, in some ways, not all the time, but maybe, 70%, 80% of the times, they're able to safeguard themselves from this situation where they lose their sense of self. But I think mothers give to an extent where they lose that, and they lose that, you know, sense of self-regulation, I would say, as they say in psychotherapy. But that's the example that I have in mind when I say that, you know, you really need to take care of yourself sometimes. Otherwise, like the example you mentioned of, you know, a professor and his scholars, that's a little different because the scholars don't expect the professor to give so much. Like even to End Dialogue Foundation, you give so freely of your time, you never say no to us. You're just, you know, even we feel that over here. But we won't expect or ask that much from you. Like we would from our mothers. Yes, she can wake up at 4 o'clock. Yes, she can go to bed at 12 at night. Yes, she can be, you know, on her feet all the hours that she's up. But that does happen. And we're also in a dialogue with our mothers.
Is that an example of being centered, or is that an example of loss of center?
An absolute loss of center to give other people a center. Well, what do you think about that?
I agree with that totally.
Yeah, so maybe in not other walks of life, but you know, this is something that surely makes they even have a term for it. It's called postpartum depression. Some mothers just lose all sense of everything. New mothers, especially. And then they have no sense of sleep. They have no sense of anything.
So that is not being centered, Nalia.
Yeah. Yeah, so no. My example of, you know, first filling your own cup comes from that there has to be some basic while giving. If you don't achieve that basic, like, you know, one mother I know, her kids are you know, in school, one of them is in college, and all of a sudden she used to be a very silent, you know, Allah Mia ki guy kind of a person, but in the past 3-4 years I've noticed she's been screaming a lot, shouting a lot, and, you know, crying at the drop of a hat and all of that. And I just started thinking, what is going on? She is a professor at a university in Delhi, and she's managing her children, she's doing all of that, and she's hardly doing anything for herself. There's no time for her. So 10 years, 15 years, you can spend like that, giving, but at some point you're going to break, and you're going to become something that you're definitely not, like a screaming, shouting kind of a person that you never were in your 45 years of life.
Yes.
But yeah, something has to happen.
You know, these are examples of non-reciprocal relationships. And reciprocity does not have to mean you give it in the same kind. It can be an acknowledgement also.
Yeah.
It can be
like society gives the certificate that you're a Mahan and you're great because
no. Acknowledgement.
Yeah, but that's all they get.
No, but that is not acknowledgement. That is a way to keep milking them all the time.
Yeah.
Acknowledgement means that you will do something in return. Acknowledgement is not just saying shabash, very good. That's not an acknowledgement. Acknowledgement means that, okay, you've done this much, I will do this much. That is acknowledgement. So reciprocity is both ways, and therefore one acknowledges the other in the act of doing, not in the act of praise. So again, the way I say this is because I keep in my mind the importance of belonging to any interaction. Does the relationship help me discover my sense of belonging or not is important for me. Does it help me in the process or not is important. And in that, no negotiation. You have to take it as where the water flows. I hope that makes sense. So any more questions? I think we should wind up now.
I just have one tiny question,
please.
When you were talking about different truths, I'm just giving an example of maybe something like, creation versus evolution, for example. So, when we have different truths, what are we when we come across something like that? What are we supposed to do? Do we dialogue? Do we just accept? Do we, ignore and focus on things that are similar?
Have you heard the story of blind man and the elephant?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So all the blind men have different truths, right? And then they sit together to ask, what is it that we are looking at? And they make a mess of what it is. So they go to Lord Buddha and say, look, आपकी प्रजा में ऐसी हो रही बातें, हम क्या करें इसका? तो उसने बोला, you missed the point. And the point is that you don't want to reconcile two different truths. You don't have to choose between the two different truths. You have to accept both of them for the value what they are worth. अब तुम कहती हो मुझे कि, let me give an example. You see the front of my hand, and I see the back of my hand. Right? Now you meet me and I tell you, no, मेरी तो हाथ में ये लगा हुआ, तुम कहते आपके हाथ में लगा ही नहीं है, तो आपकी बात को मानूंगा कि नहीं मानूंगा? So you have to grant the other person the truth that he's saying, even if he's telling you a lie. I have no way to verify it because you're standing in a position of a world which is unique to you, and I can't take your position no matter how hard I try. So I have to accept what you say to be true, even if you're telling me a lie. And the conversation goes on. Because the whole can never be known. But the whole is always there at the back of your mind, without which you will not be able to make any progress. So what you are saying is, in one word I would say, when you face two different truths, please accept that we are all incomplete beings. And you will feel quite at rest with that.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Thank you so much. Thank you for participating in this interesting conversation. And I thought that I would not be able to carry it through, but I think you all helped the session to come to a good closure.
Sir, can I please ask one question?
Bolo.
Sir, how often do you have non-linear conversations?
All the time.
Was this a non-linear conversation for you?
Yes.
So I have another question. So you don't seem like a person who maybe goes by the rules, or who likes the idea of permanence or something. Do you like how to cope with not liking the idea of permanence? Maybe like
it's
a permanent.
It's great fun.
Just being in the dynamic role of life, right?
It's great fun because it's full of surprises.
Okay.
I don't have a minute of boredom in my life, even if I do nothing. There are many times in my life when I do nothing. I just get tired and just want to do nothing. And I'm quite at peace with that. I quite enjoy it. I'm a non-linear person, let's put it this way. If that makes some sense to you. You think I'm a non-linear person? I'm a straight man. I'm a linear man. I stand straight.
So if you're non-linear, does that mean that you have got lots of personalities?
No, that doesn't mean that.
Okay. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to offend you or anything.
No. It doesn't mean that at all. I would say that the one personality that I have, I can know it better if I'm a non-linear person. Only linear people can have multiple personalities. Let's put it this way. then these personalities don't talk to each other at all. Linearity has that quality of putting things in compartments. Non-linear का मतलब ये है कि हर चीज is related to everything else. That's the meaning of non-linear. I can begin from here and go to the black hole, and I can begin from the moon and come here. The only thing is I have to discover the connections that take me from here to the black hole. They're all connected. And this connection cannot be linear. It has to go through many roads, many paths, many mountains, many rivers, many bridges have to be made. But there is a connection between everything in the world. Once you understand this wholeness, then you cannot but be non-linear. कोई रास्ता ही नहीं है और दूसरा. Try and do one experiment, all of you. Try and pick an object to which you have no relationship at all, like a black hole or a star in the galaxy, or a point, say for example in America, somebody's heard about it, and try and trace your link to it. जब बुश छींक मारता है तो इंडिया की स्टॉक मार्केट गिर जाती है. ये कैसे होता है भाई? उसकी छींक का और इंडिया की स्टॉक मार्केट का क्या लिंक है? तो है. And this is best known to Buddhism and to Sufism. वो कहते हैं आपने एक मच्छर मारा ना, आपको लगता है एक मच्छर मारा आपने, वो कहते हैं आपने पूरी इकोलॉजी को डिस्टर्ब किया. So I hope that is good enough for today. Tolika, anything else?
No, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
So we now have enough to digest today. Thank you so much, sir. As we close today's session, I want to extend a sincere thank you to you from all the participants and from InDialogue Foundation. Your insights have deeply enriched our understanding of dialogue and belonging. For all the participants, your engagement and questions have made today's discussion truly dynamic. Let's take the insights from Professor Savyasaachi and actively apply them, fostering environments where dialogue leads to genuine belonging. Thank you, Professor Savyasaachi, for your time.
Thank you
and
very
let's
much.
carry this momentum forward in our endeavors. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, everyone, for being patient and participating and coming along.